What's up, Dragon Nation? I'm Rich with Dragon Nation Gaming. Welcome back to another Space Engineers tutorial. Last episode we went over initial mining. This episode we want to go ahead and go over production. Not only just throw down like a refinery and assembler, but also go through some tips that will help you make things a little bit more organized and work a little bit better for you. Let's go ahead and get this started. Alright, so up till now, we've been using the space pod. This is the old one because I got rid of the other blueprint. I should have kept it. But anyways, so far, we've only been using the space pod for getting resources and production. Last episode, we went out in our spacesuit to go out and get some more resources, mark them, and then bring them back to the base. So there is a little trick that I like to do. I like to set things up in, well, stages. Kind of like stages. So first stage of mining, which is that initial mining, I'll go out to an asteroid, which is like that asteroid right there, have that nickel that's sitting right there. I'll go out, I'll fill up my inventory full of nickel, come back to the base, drop it off, and then go back out, try to find something else. And I'll keep doing that until I have all of these resources. So your personal inventory carries about 4,000 liters. 4,000 liters is about 10,000 kilograms of each one of these ores. If I go ahead and pull, let's say, cobalt, as you can see, it fills up about 3,753, but also you will have bottles as well, oxygen bottles, hydrogen bottles, so it's going to fill up the rest of that. So that's what I like to do first. The initial mining, I'll go and I'll get about 10,000 kilograms of each ore. Then what I'll do is I'll go ahead and process that, and that should get me up to the point where I could get myself a mining ship. The thing is you don't want to waste too much time. You don't want to go get any more ore than you have to, because then all you're doing is you're going to get ore, you're wasting the time trying to hand drill when you already have the resources you need to make a small miner. So like I said, what you want to do is you want to go out and find those resources. The ones that are most difficult to find, let's go in here real quick and I'll show you. So the two most important that you really need to find is, well, actually only one. One you're really looking for is cobalt. Cobalt will get you to the point where you can build yourself a regular refinery. Regular refinery, let me go ahead and put it right here. As you can see, bottom right hand corner, it takes metal grids. It takes 20 of those. And we need cobalt in order to make those. Without the cobalt, we can't advance any further. So once you find cobalt, make sure that cobalt is the first one you process, so that way you can go ahead and get that refinery. Of course, you would process it on the ship, it wouldn't be on the station. Now, there's two different ways we could do this. The next tier is to go ahead, or the next stage of production is you want to go ahead and either set up a stationary base on an asteroid, or you want to try to figure out a mobile base with the refinery and the assembler. The problem is the space pod is now too small for that. Mostly because of the size of the refinery, the space pod will not accommodate the large refinery or the regular refinery. So you have to do one of two things. One, you could either do the stationary station, like I said, or build yourself a new ship. In this episode, we're going to go over a stationary station. We're going to go over not only production, but we're also going to go over how to set up a sorting system, make everything easier for you, and we're going to go ahead and go over power in another episode. So, like I said, you do have one option. You could go ahead, right now I'm just going to place a refinery right here. You could just plop down a refinery and an assembler and call that good. Actually, let's go ahead and rotate you this way so we can see what the hell's going on. There we go. So you could just plop down a refinery and an assembler, make sure you have some power, which we have power right there with the battery. And right now I would actually have to do them by hand because they are not connected. But if I went ahead and connected the refinery, as you can see, the refinery on this side has an access point. There's an access point on the opposite side. Up on the top there is an access point, and then there is another access point on the opposite side. On the bottom, right there. So what I want to try to do is I want to try to line that cargo container up to that refinery, but there is another option for that. Actually, you know what? No. Let's go ahead and connect it. So if we take the refinery and we connect that access point that's right there on the side with the cargo container, all the ores will now automatically pull from that cargo container to that refinery. So as you can see, it takes a little while because it only allows a certain amount to pass over at a time. One of the things you have to keep in mind when you're doing sorters as well. Now, at some point you will be building a large grid miner, and you're going to be picking up a lot of resources. Keep in mind that trying to transfer everything over and wait for it to do it on its own is going to take forever. There is another option though. You can go ahead and select the refinery and just double click, do it by hand. Okay, the ice cannot go in the refinery because technically, well, the ice is ore, but technically it's not. It's hard to explain. But yeah, it will not go into the refinery. We'll deal with that later on. Now, what the refinery does is it takes that ore and it turns it into ingots. Eventually, when we put enough ore into the refinery, sooner or later the refinery is going to fill up. So what we need to do is we need to go ahead and get rid of the ingots so that way we still have room for this thing to process the ore. Now there's a couple different ways we could do this. One, I could take a cargo container, put it right here on the other side, right for this access point. Now what's going to happen is those ingots, once it fills up this refinery, the ore is full, the ingots start filling up, it's going to start to overflow to any cargo container that is connected to it. Which means that one right there, and that one right there. But here's the issue. Say you want to go out mining. You ran out of, let's say, iron, because iron happens all the time. You run out of it all the time. So let's say you ran out of iron, and you also want to look to see what other resources you're short on, what other ores. You want to see what you have to go out and mine. Right now, if I look, I have 3 different areas that might have ingots. That cargo container will have ingots in it. The refinery will have ingots in it. And that cargo container right there will have ingots in it. So there is an option for that, just to organize everything a little bit. Make it a lot easier to find what you're looking for. If I go ahead and hit Control 2, that will go to my second toolbar so I can go ahead and go through my conveyors. So what we're looking for is this block right here. That right there is a conveyor sorter. That is going to help us pull the ingots out of the refinery into another cargo container to try to keep them consolidated so it's easier to find them. First thing we need to do, that white arrow that is on the side of the block, we need to make sure that's pointing in the correct direction. Now with the sorter, as you can see, the arrow is pointing to the right. There's 2 access points on the sorter. One on this side, one on the other side. Now because of the arrow, you can only pass things one way. If I try to pass something from this block here back through to the refinery, it will not let me. But there is one exception to that. I don't know if it's still a thing, I have to test it out, but oxygen can flow through a sorter no matter which way the sorter is pointing. Something I'll have to test out when we get into oxygen. But now what I want to go ahead and do is I want to go ahead and set up that sorter. So right now the cargo container that we have on the other side of the refinery will be just a main hub. We'll throw things in there so that way it can get sorted out through a sorting system. So what I want to do is, this is the conveyor sorter. Now the conveyor sorter is actually really easy. Just take your time, make sure you do it correctly. So what I want to do, the first thing, which is the most important thing, is the filter mode. You want to change this to whitelist. Alright, so let me go ahead and go over these real quick. You have two different options. You have blacklist and you have whitelist. If you have blacklist selected, that means it will pass everything except for the item that you say. So let's say ammo. If I say blacklist and add ammo, the blacklist will allow everything else to pass through the sorter, but will prevent the ammo. If I change that to whitelist, it'll be the opposite. It will not allow anything other than ammo to pass through. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to keep it on whitelist, get rid of the ammo. Now what I want to do is I want to go ahead and pass ingots from the refinery to a cargo container, which is going to be on the right side. So we'll go ahead and add that. So now we're at whitelist ingots. Now what I want to do is I want it to automatically drain any ingots in the cargo container or the refinery. So we're going to turn that on. Now after we have that done, I'm going to go ahead and put the cargo container right here. And now all those ingots should be pulling into this cargo container. And there they go. So now any ingots that were in that cargo container right there, that were in the refinery, are all now being pulled to one storage. So say I want to go out and I want to do some mining. I need to figure out what I need to mine. All I do is come to the cargo container and it tells me right here. So now we have that cargo container connected to the assembler because of the access point on the other side. Now the assembler will automatically pull whatever resource or whatever ingot it needs to process whatever item you're processing. So if we go up to production and we select the sheet metal, let's go ahead and do one metal, or a steel plate, I'm sorry, sheet metal. Where did I get sheet metal from? But yeah, if we select steel plate, it will make us 1,000. Now there's a few different ways you could go ahead and select how much of the steel plate you want to make. If you hold down control, that will add another 10. If you hold down shift, that will add another 100. If you hold down control and shift and left click, that will do 1,000. So we are producing a bit right now. So now what I want to do is eventually all the resources that I have to process are going to kind of clog that assembler up. It's going to get full and I have nowhere for it to go except for this cargo container right here. But that's the cargo container for the ingots. Not only that, eventually that cargo container will become full as well. And then the assembler will stop running. So what we want to do is we want to go ahead and grab those components, pull them out, and put them into another cargo container. So we're going to go ahead and put a sorter right here. And we are going to have that sorter pull everything that the assembler can make. So we're going to go whitelist. Now from the assembler, we're going to go ammo, components, hand tools. We're going to scroll down to hydrogen bottles and oxygen bottles. Oh yeah, also ice. And where's my oxygen bottle? There it is. So that right there is everything that's going to be made in the assembler that we need to get over here except for the ice. Now the ice I like to have over here so that way I can connect it to the medical room, an O2 generator and stuff like that. I'll show you that here in a second. Then I put a cargo container right here. Oh, and one thing I did forget. Go back into the sorter. Make sure we select drain all on. Go. Now all the components should be passing into, there it is, that cargo container right there. Alright, so the next thing we need to worry about is I want ice over here for an O2 generator. And also for the medical room. But the ice is stuck over here. So what I can do, since it's only ice, I could go ahead and tell this sorter to allow it to pass through that sorter over to this cargo container. But there is also another option I could do as well. So here's the thing. Say, do I have one around here somewhere? Yeah, I do. Alright, that right there, the Rust Freighter, that is a cargo ship. Cargo ships are just in-game ships that float around where you can go ahead and get resources from them if you are able to capture them. So let's say you captured that Rust Freighter, you brought it back to base, you ground it down for all of its resources, you put all those resources into this cargo container so it can get sorted out. Now, the best thing about that is when you come into it, into the cargo container, all you have to do is just get rid of all the items and put it into one cargo container. You don't have to go to this cargo container and just put in ores. You don't have to go to this cargo container and only put in ingots, and you don't have to go to this one just put in components. You could put everything in the same cargo container, this one right here, and it will automatically sort out. Except right now it will not sort out the components. The reason is we have no access that brings it all the way to this end. That sorter right there will only allow ingots. It will not allow components. So what we could do is I could tell that sorter right there to allow all the components or anything else that we would build in the assembler. Just like this sorter right here. We could go ahead and add all of this to that sorter as well. But there is a problem with that. One is if that cargo container becomes full, then all those components and everything will be stuck in that cargo container and they'll be mixed in with the ingots. Not only that, but sorters are a bottleneck. So the way the inventory is set up, the first item has priority. So if I have multiple items sitting right here, whatever is in the first block has the first priority. Nothing else in that cargo container will pass through until that first block is done. Then it will go to the next block, or the next item in the next block, and then the next one, and then the next one. And that is what is called a bottleneck. So when you have ores, ingots, and components passing through, it could take quite some time to get all that stuff out. So what you want to do is you want to go ahead and make a, well, I guess we could call it a secondary pipeline for the components. You could do one for the ingots as well. At some point you might have to, depending on the design of your base. But what I want to do is I'm going to go ahead and pass from this cargo container all the way to where the sorter is, add another sorter, and it's going to have exactly the same thing as the sorter right next to it. So everything that could be built with the assembler, anything that could be processed by the assembler. So whitelist, oxygen bottle, need to come up to hydrogen bottle and ice. Now, ammo, components, and hand tools. There it is. Now we need to go ahead, let's not forget to turn on drain all. So now at this point, the ice should also be pulled over here as well. And there it is. So now what we need to worry about is oxygen. Now there's a couple different options for us with the oxygen. Probably the best thing for this setup right here is Control 1. Grab the O2 generator and then find a location to place it. So probably, you know what? Let's just place it right here for right now. That should work. So now we're able to process that ice, which should have automatically pulled into that O2 generator. Yes, it did. Now what we need to talk about is spawning. Right now the ship, the space pod, is the only spawn area that we have. But I want to get rid of that ship and grab all the resources. So I need to make this station a respawn point, which means I need a medical room. Now, if we go ahead and grab a medical room and we take a look at the access points, I do want oxygen and hydrogen to pass through to it. So if we take a look at it, you'll notice that the access points are on the top and on the bottom. So there's a couple different ways that we could do this to connect this to the oxygen. One, I could go ahead and just put it up against the wall like this, make sure it's turned, just like that. If I wanted to, I could do that. That'd be fine. But for those of us who have a little OCD, we can't do that. So there's another option that we have. One is I could pass a conveyor from the top somewhere, pass it to that one, or what I like to do is just go underneath. Oop, nope, not what I meant to do. There we go. Conveyor junction and conveyor junction. Now, am I out of power? I am out of power. Let me grab a battery real quick. So G battery. There it is. Come on, would you just drag. There we go. Alright, so now, what? Why don't you have power now? Oh, because I disconnected it. I guess the only place that the medical room snaps is right on that access point. So if you don't have a snap from the beginning, you're going to have to rebuild it. There we go. Alright, so now that we have that connected, we should be able to get power, O2, and H2. Let's see. And there it is. Alright, so a couple of different things you could do for power. I recommend going ahead and putting a few batteries on the station, but at some point you are going to have to recharge those. Now, one option you have is, of course, if I can spell it correctly, a small reactor. Now, this base doesn't use up a whole lot of power, so one small reactor is fine. Now, the fuel for the small reactor is uranium ingots. Uranium ingots are, well, an ingot. So just go ahead and put it right on top of the ingot cargo container. And then when the refinery finally processes it, let's go ahead and bring that uranium to the front. There we go. It will pull that uranium into the reactor automatically. Your reactor will automatically pull the uranium. And you can tell when it's working because right there, it'll turn green. So what I like to do is, if I do have uranium, I'll go ahead and let the reactor run. And then the batteries that I have on the station, I will let charge. So this will fully charge in 18 minutes. Then when that battery is fully charged, I will turn off that reactor and let the battery run. Now, the purpose for that is to try to save on uranium. Right in the beginning, you're not going to find a whole lot. You're not going to be able to get a whole lot. So try to be sparing. There used to be a time in the game when we didn't have to worry about it. If you found uranium, that was all you ever needed. And you had all the power that you could ever want. Now, there are a couple different types of power. We'll go over those at some point. But this episode, that's about it. So that's a stationary station. That's one thing that you can set up right there. It's very simple, very easy. I do have a setup that I do all the time. If you want to check that out, go ahead and go to the live streams that I do every Saturday on Space Engineers. And if you want to see me do something, or you want to see me build something that you're kind of curious about, or you have a question of just in-game stuff, go ahead and ask me in the comments when we're live streaming, and I will, if I catch it, I'll try to answer your questions. I try to be as helpful as possible. But now that we have ourselves a station right here, which has plenty of power, has a spawn point, has oxygen, has everything for processing, we can go ahead and get rid of that ship. Later on, we need to talk about mining ship. So the best place to put the mining ship, put a connector for it, is that cargo container right there. Now, of course, for that, I would have to make room. So really fast, let me go ahead and show you the design I have for my starter base. So this right here is my starter base. This is usually what I start out with when I start doing processing. And the reason for that is the sorting system. I like being organized. So let's go over this real quick. So we have our initial cargo container. This is where your ship will dock and be unloaded, which feeds down to this conveyor junction. Now to the left, this sorter will pull ore and ingots to this cargo container. The ore and the ingots will, well, the ore will go into the refinery, and then the ingots will just pass through to go to this cargo container, which is for the ingots. Now back to that conveyor junction, the other direction, this is where the components pass through to go to the cargo container that's right here. Now going back over here to the ingots, of course we have a reactor there, so that way we can get fuel from the uranium ingots. Then it's also connected to that assembler, which is connected to that sorter, which pulls the components from the assembler into this cargo container. Then of course we have conveyor junctions that go up to the medical room. And then right here is the O2 generator, which will bring oxygen back thanks to that conveyor junction right there. Then of course for a little bit of power I have 2 batteries. I could add more if I want to, but we'll just leave it like that. Now this connector up here, this is whenever you dock up a ship and you want to load it with something. Usually components like a welding ship. So yeah, it's actually a pretty damn good base. I love it. But yeah, as far as stationary bases go, this is mine. This is the design that I use all the time. Next episode, we'll be going over what you could do for a ship design. We'll probably just go ahead and do the yellow respawn ship, the one we had in the game back in the beginning. But until then, make sure to like and subscribe, all that good stuff. I'll see y'all in the next one. Peace.